Hi everyone, this is Jody Robinson. Welcome to this month's Jewel Process. This month, Ava Birch and I will be sharing some design ideas for the triple row Geese quilt. So let's go ahead and get started with the hand-guided design idea. And as you'll see on your printable, the quilt is oriented the other way, but to execute this design process on this one, I would load it this way just because it's going to make the quilting easier. So you'll notice that I have marked some very gentle wavy lines in yellow, and that's going to be the spines for our feathers. So I would mark that ahead of time. You could certainly mark it as you go if that's what you like to do. And so what we're going to do is we're going to treat the geese separately from what I see as the background, which is the white strips, as well as the corners of the flying geese. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and start. Typically we would start right at the very top, but because the geese would be in my stitching area, I'm going to go ahead and start with those just because I'm going to stitch them in the ditch. So that will just be done so that the feathers, I can then place those above them on the top. So I would start on the left here. And what we're going to do, I'm going to stitch in the ditch around these. So I'm going to go ahead and do that all first. And then it can be nice and continuous. So I would stitch like this. All the way to the other side. And then just work my way back. Whoops. So now that puts me back where I started. So I'm going to go ahead and just come down to the center. And what we're going to do is add some little swirls in here. This could certainly be very easily changed. Maybe your quilt has fabrics in it that are very floral. You could also do some leaves in here, but we're going to do swirls. And so what we're going to do is just eyeball the center. I'm going to put a swirl into this corner and this corner, and then one on the top. And then we're just going to come back and travel right to the next one. So it's swirl, 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 and travel. We're going to do that the whole way across. And it's nice because, you know, after the first one, you know where the center is because you have the seam. And you can alternate the swirls or have them all one direction. That really is up to you. Okay, now when you get to this side, we're going to stop at the point there, and I would tie off. And now I'm going to come back, and I'm going to use this marked spine to stitch along. And you can do, again, maybe you did leaves in these. The swirls just aren't going to work for your quilt. You could put leaves on these spines as well. But again, we're going to use the feathers. And I'm not going to stitch the spine. Personal preference, I like to do mine left to right and do it, and that kind of creates the spine. But you could certainly do it a different way if you choose. So I'm just going to work my way across. And what I want to do is get these feathers to come in here to fill in that background area of the geese. So some will be smaller, some will be larger. We're just going to do that the whole way across. On these ones, of course, the ones going out to the edge will all be ending at the edge. You don't need to make them fit into a specific area. Whoop. We'll just keep doing this across the quilt. Whoa. Till we get to the other side. I like when you use the feathers to fill areas because then you get a really nice kind of flowing look because you're making some are bigger, some are smaller. And then when we get to this side, I like to just come out of here as if I were going to do another feather, but then stop and tie off. So then you may or may not, depending on how big your quilt is, need to roll, advance the quilt. So if you need to do that, you would do that now. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to start with the stitch in the ditch just because then it'll give me that line, and we already have the line from the previous geese. So we're going to, again, stitch over. And then back. And I would, of course, use a ruler if I were doing the actual stitching. And then we'll go ahead and repeat those swirls. So we're going to have swirl, swirl, and swirl, travel. Whoop, forgot to travel. Travel. That's why a lot of times when I actually quilt a quilt, I am saying something in my head. And then when we get to this side, we're going to go ahead again and tie off right here. Now you could do it from here. You could come up here and just start doing your feathers. I just like to do them left to right. So I would tie off, come back up here to this gentle curvy spine, and now again do these feathers. We're just going to repeat this whole process to complete the quilt. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this. Okay, so that brings us to the end. I think this is a really nice feminine look to it. But like I said, you could easily have changed these feathers to leaves or swirls really on a spine for that matter. So I hope you guys enjoy that design idea for this quilt, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Hi everyone, I'm Ava Birch, and thank you for joining me. So today's quilt is called the Triple Row Geese, and when you take a look at it, it's pretty self-explanatory why it's called that. So I've selected some patterns I'm gonna try to keep it pretty traditional because I do like the traditional look for quilting, but of course you can, choose different patterns and make it more your own. So I'm going to start out with this simple arc point-to-point pattern, and I've sized it according to the size of my flying geese, so I can just bring it over on the CAD screen. And then I'm going to make sure it's placed well right in this geese right here. And now the next step could be that I'm going to rubber stamp all the other patterns in these geese. But I try to work as efficient as possible. So instead of doing that, I decided to use the draw arc function, and I'm going to go ahead and draw the arc. I'm going to start right here. And I'm going to go just around here, drawing my arc. Now I'm going in the other direction. And then I'm exiting my drawing function, and I'm going to click on the first arc that I drew, and I'm going to order join. And it looks like I was spot on. So once I've order joined, I'm going to combine this pattern, and then I saved this pattern, and it's right here. Now I can use this pattern and rubber stamp it in all the different geese. So I'm going to do that. So once I've placed all the patterns, I can go in there individually. I can see that perhaps right here on this pattern, I need to nudge that just a little bit. So I'm going to hold down my Alt key and the arrow keys to make the small nudge adjustments. So I'm going to go through there and check everything before I proceed to the next step. And once I've done that, if I do an order join and take a look at this, I can see that clearly they are not connected. And my goal is to be able to stitch those out consecutively. So I'm going to go to options and turn on my starts and ends and my jump stitches, because I want to see where I need to connect. So I'm going to select draw line because I want to connect all those. And I'm going to make sure that my endpoint snaps are on. I'm going to come down here. And I'm going to go all the way through, making sure they're all going to be connected. And once I've gone all the way through, I'm going to perform an order join again. And this time, everything is yellow and highlighted. I'm going to combine, and I can see that they will stitch out continuously. So at this point, I would save, as I have done here, this whole row of patterns and then rubber stamp them or copy and paste them onto the other triangles. Of course, I'm working on an image here in standalone mode. If I was working on an actual quilt, I would, of course, need to make sure that everything lines up properly. It's always easier to mock it up in standalone mode, but sometimes it just helps us figure out which path to take to then make it easier for us when we get to the actual quilt. So now that we've taken care of all the geese, we're going to go ahead and work on those sashings or borders, whatever you want to call them. So for the sashing or the borders, I chose this channel pearl design, and I'm going to select draw line and draw a line right alongside here. And once I exit the drawing function, I can select the channel pearl pattern and use apply. And so now it applied this pattern to my border. And the reason why I drew that on the outside of the sashing is because of where the start and stop points are. So now I'm with the line highlighted. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to order join the patterns and then combine them. And once I have done that, I can go ahead and move it centered within that sashing. I'm gonna select my handles. I want to get the gray handles and squish that down just a little bit. And once I have done that, I can save that pattern. And now I can use that pattern to place it right into those other borders. Make small adjustments if necessary. I can also select the rubber stamp feature and place it where I would like it. And one more time. Okay, now we have placed all of our designs on our triple geese quilt outline. If I was to stitch this, I would definitely load the quilt horizontally. I would flip this around, because that way I can stitch out all the rows at once. So I have to make sure that I don't choose a directional backing in order to do that, but that would be the most efficient way to stitch this out, by flipping it. So hopefully you have enjoyed this process, and are gonna play with some of your own patterns. Happy quilting! I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Dual Process and were inspired to create your own mock-ups with your patterns. We'll see you next time.